Hello everyone, my name is Emily and I'm back. Oh my god! I gave birth on September 21st, so I went ahead and took a few weeks off of doing YouTube to spend time with my babes and my husband. And now after that very needed time of bonding with my family, I'm back. By the way, if you hear some rattling in the background, I'm kind of sorry about that. I need to have the heater on to keep my office nice and warm because DeBabes is sleeping and I'd like to keep him sleeping while I record this audio. I actually had a pretty crazy birth story from start to finish, and I'd really like to share it with you guys. So that's what this video is gonna be all about. It's gonna be how I blasted a baby out of me. How he just came flying out, just a slip and slide of life. Just copious amounts of fluid. So about a week before my due date, my dad drove in from Oregon in hopes that he would be here when the baby is born. In case you guys don't know, my mom lives in the same city that I do, and the rest of my family is kind of scattered throughout the United States. Both my dad and I really wanted him to be here for the birth of my first biological child, so he went ahead and made that grueling 2.5 day against my better wishes, dad, please don't pull over at a truck stop and nap for a few hours because you're gonna get stabbed or robbed trip. It was kind of funny too because I went in for my 39th week appointment. They checked me. I was only 2 centimeters dilated. I wasn't having any like serious contractions. So when I called and told my dad that, he was like, okay, I'm gonna leave tomorrow, bye. My dad was just fucking ready. Never mind me having a go bag. Never mind my husband having a go bag. Never mind my mother having a go bag. My dad had a go bag and he's like 3 states away, okay? He was not messing around. So after he got here, he stayed with us a few days, then he stayed with my mom and my stepdad for a few days because they cool like that, and we overall just had a really good time. I think my dad got a really big kick out of how big my belly was. Like, I'm a relatively short person. I'm only 5'2", and my belly just stuck straight out in front of me. Like, not much on the sides, all out in the front. Like, if you were behind me, you couldn't even tell I was pregnant. But if I turned to the side, like, Jesus, back up, like, watch your head. It's like I was constantly like moving furniture through a narrow doorway. Like I had to maneuver myself really skillfully. It's like pregnant Tetris. Will she fit? Anyway, it's the day before my due date and nothing's really happening. My dad and I are just hanging out at home and we decide to just go get something to eat, just fast food, something easy. There's this place in the Midwest called Runza and they make burgers and things like that, but they're kind of famous for their Runza sandwich, which is basically just a ton of dough, a ton of cheese, and some meat. It's really not healthy, and it doesn't really look great. I mean, in the commercials and the advertisements, of course it looks great, but when you get one up close, it just looks like the epitome of fast food. So I don't really want to weigh myself down with all that dough, especially since I'm so close to my due date. I just wanted to play it safe, so I went ahead and opted for it. You might hear that little grunting sound peppered throughout this video because my son is not a huge crier. He's more of a grunter, a squeaker, and a cooer. It's very cute. But anyway, I opted for a cheeseburger because, like I said, I was playing it safe, right? Now that night, my mom and my stepdad had plans to take us out to a pizza parlor, but I was feeling pretty exhausted, as you do when you carry around a tiny human in your stomach. So my husband and I opted to stay back and we went ahead and let my dad go and have fun. Well, around 5:30, I started to feel nauseous, which was not uncommon. I vomited the majority of my pregnancy, save for the first few months, which I know is kind of hilarious because normally it's the other way around, but I guess I got the crappy end of the stick, or should I say the barfy end of the stick? So funny. Mom jokes, anyone? But then I started getting gas pains to accompany that nausea, and as well as feeling like I had to go to the bathroom. Now, little TMI tidbit here, but when you're pregnant, you get a little constipated. There's a lot of weight bearing down on your colon, so it's not gonna work too great for you. Well, when I went up to try to use the bathroom, I couldn't, and I felt so sick, and so I started to throw up Thank God I always had bags in the bathroom because that had happened before. So I threw up in a bag and I just wasn't feeling good. I couldn't use the restroom and my gas pains were getting more and more intense. Now I have a really high pain tolerance. I very rarely exclaim from getting injured. I haven't cried from getting injured probably in over a decade. That's just kind of how I'm built. But I was in so much pain with these gas pains. Like I was hollering. It's like everything was trapped in my stomach and it's almost like throwing up made it worse. I was just in agony. So I thought, oh, then this must be labor. These feel nothing like my Braxton Hicks, but I was told that labor contractions would be very different. But they were gas pains though. I could hear them through my stomach. I was shaking, I was sweating, I was pale. I felt like I was going to faint. And at this point, the gas pains were coming on almost like contractions, like they would well up and then die out, and then I'd be okay for about 7 minutes, and then they'd well up and die out, and I'd be yelling. And finally, I just said, Mike, get your bag, I'll get mine. Like, we need to go to the hospital now. Something's not right. On our way to the hospital, I had all these racing thoughts. Like, the obvious number one dominant one was, is the baby okay? And then, like, are these contractions? Why am I hearing gas through my stomach? That doesn't make sense. And then if these are contractions and I am going into labor, why did it come on all of a sudden? Like, I've always heard that the contractions start slow and they build up and they build up, and this just happened like boom, instantly. Well, we get to the hospital and I am still in a ton of pain and I'm hollering, and they wheelchair me up to delivery, and one of the nurses looks at me and says, oh no, maybe you guys waited too late. We're gonna hurry and try to get you back into a room. And I'm like, crap, like what? Did I just miss a huge part of my labor? Like, but what? Oh no, I don't want to wait too late because I wanted to opt for an epidural, and I know past a certain point you can't get an epidural. And I'm like, oh hell to the no. I am not feeling this horrible, agonizing pain for another few hours of my life. Like, I'm done. Like, I'm clocked out, baby. Well, thankfully, that nurse's crappy bedside manner was wrong. I was not going into labor. When they checked me, I was still only 2 centimeters dilated, and I was having tiny, tiny contractions alongside the gas pains. They just kind of synced up, and the only reason I was having contractions like that was because my colon was irritated, so it was irritating my uterus. Though I wasn't going into labor, I still needed to be in the hospital because I was severely dehydrated. My urine was the color of like a dark, dark liqueur. Like, it was scary. And then there was also ketones present in my urine, which basically means that my body has used up 100% of its energy and it is running on empty. If you guys didn't know, dehydration is one of the most dangerous things a pregnant woman could experience. It's dangerous for you, and it is incredibly dangerous, possibly fatal for your baby. Obviously, it's more dangerous for babies that aren't to term, and at that point, obviously, little to babes was full term, but it was still a critical situation. So they went ahead and hooked me up to an IV and just pumped me filled with fluids. They obviously were going to keep me overnight because it was 11:30 at that point. They had given me an anti-nausea shot as well as, I think, a shot to help me use the restroom, so I was able to use the restroom, and I just felt nasty and dirty. What was nice is they took me to a labor delivery room, so I had my own bathroom in there with like this nice tub with jets. So I asked the nurse if it would be okay if I could take a bath, but because I had the IV in, they had to like wrap it so it wouldn't get wet. So when I hopped in the bath, I had my husband wash my hair, and I'm gonna tell you, that was the most pleasant experience of that entire night. Like, having the crappiest feeling in the world to like one of the best feelings in the world. Like, is that just me? Like, I love when I go to the hairdresser and they wash your hair. It's just like, don't ever stop doing that. Well, while my husband's washing my hair, I kind of feel a strange sensation down below, like I released a little bit of fluid, but I just ignored it because I figured it was the jets in the bath, until it happens again about 5 minutes later. So I tell my husband, I think my water just broke. And of course he thinks the same thing. He goes, oh no, hon, you're just delusional and you're surrounded by water and there's jets on your butt. Like, you probably just, uh-oh. Somebody's hungry. The babes, do you want a food? I can get you a food. DeBabe's made a hunger, so we got him some food. We are formula feeding our DeBabes. If you breastfed your DeBabes, then that is wonderful. All the power to you for being able to do that. But I was not able to do that. I did get to experience it for a little bit, which was amazing and beautiful, and I wish I could have experienced it more. But in the end, we were not able to do that. So, to each his own. Just don't get on my ass, okay? The study's saying that formula is somehow bad or poisonous for babies or makes them not learn as quickly. A lot of these are just anecdotal, so please just don't get on my ass. Like, please, I'm just feeding my DeBabes. So my husband kind of talked me down and made me believe that my water didn't break and I was feeling things. So I was done with his services, so he left the bathroom and I got out, dried myself off, and then went to use the restroom to pee. And then all of a sudden a bunch of fluid fell out of me onto the toilet seat, and it was not pee. So I called the nurse, and she came with this little strip that they swab you with, and it tells you if your water has broken or not, and my water absolutely 100% did break. And that means that my labor actually started the very, very early mornings of DeBabe's due date. So the doctor that was seeing me that night had actually told me that things like food poisoning. Oh, is it good? So the doctor that was seeing me that night told me when I came in that sometimes food poisoning or a cold or flu or something kind of traumatic that happens to the body can sometimes jumpstart labor. Well, it sometimes happens, but most of the time it doesn't. Well, in my case, it definitely happened. Now, like I said before, I 110% wanted to opt for the epidural. It was in my birth plan. I wanted to experience my labor pain-free and just be able to be there and very aware of what was going on around me. Well, that did and did not happen. The nurse told me that the best course of action would probably be to get some sleep so I could build back some of the energy that I had lost, and then when it comes time to deliver DeBabes, I would have enough energy to do so. I wasted no time getting to sleep. My contractions were very manageable at that point, so I was able to get a fair night's sleep. Around 7 a.m., a nurse comes in and checks me, and I am barely 2.5 centimeters dilated. So in that course of maybe 7 hours or more, I only dilated 0.5 centimeter. Like, that's nothing. So of course they recommend administering Pitocin. And Pitocin is a drug they put into your IV to help get labor going. And I agree to that. I know that's kind of controversial, but for this birth, I didn't know what I was getting into, and I wanted to enjoy it in the sense that I didn't want pain to distract me. So I opted for the Pitocin. I opted for the epidural. And remember, to each her own. You may have opted to do your delivery at a birthing center, and all you had was a grit on your teeth and a stress ball to push you through the pain. Girl, more power to you for doing zero chemicals. Like, I 100% praise you, and you will see why as this story develops. So after they administer the Pitocin, my contractions really get going and they become painful. I'm on and off the labor ball. I'm trying to find a comfortable position. My husband learned some pressure points and he's trying to do those to make them less painful. And I think I last until I'm about 4 centimeters dilated. And then I'm just like, girl, no, Lord Jesus, send in the clowns. Like, I can't do this anymore. Jesus, come down from heaven and give me this epidural. Oh wait, no, it's not going to be Jesus. It's going to be an anesthesiologist. Okay, whatever, whoever. Like, get down here. Like, anesthesiologist, take the wheel. Now, to be honest with you guys, I was actually really afraid of being administered the epidural because all you ever hear, like the whole stigma around being given the epidural is that if you move like even a centimeter, you will be paralyzed. Like, a needle will stab through your spine and you'll be paralyzed for the rest of your life. Now, it's a little bit of a myth. Like, you have to sit still, but not like statue still. You have to sit about as still as you would for getting any other kind of shot. A lot of women have their water break or have a really strong contraction come on, and they can't help but tense up up, and that is 100% okay. I'm really anxious about stuff, and I found that after I was given the epidural that I really had nothing to be anxious about. I was also a little anxious about how it would feel being numb from the waist down, not being able to control my legs and just having that be dead weight. And I don't know if this was just me, but I was still able to move my legs a little bit. So now that I had the epidural and the pain was gone, you'd think that I'd be talking to my parents and my husband and I'd be in the moment, living it up. Well, you'd be very wrong, because remember how I said I wasn't thinking about eating? Well, I didn't eat. And now at that point, I wasn't allowed to eat. I could only have fluids. So I had absolutely zero energy. The last meal I had was that hamburger from Runza, and I barfed all of that up. I literally would fall asleep while talking to someone, like mid-sentence, just drop off. I was dipping in and out of states of deep sleep all day. My body was completely depleted of energy, and this was the only way that it could make it up. I was stuck at 4 centimeters for so long, and it was going so slowly, yet the Pitocin was making my contractions get closer and closer together. You definitely don't want that to happen, so they ended up taking me off of the Pitocin. My doctor, meanwhile, was in the building. He popped in to say hi, but then let me know that I wouldn't be seeing him again until I was ready to push. Now, all of this is happening on September 21st, which is DeBabe's projected due date. And my doctor really didn't think I'd be delivering DeBabe's until the very early morning of September 22nd, which was the following day. I think he believed this because I was taken off of the Pitocin because I was stuck at 4 centimeters for so long. You remove the thing that is accelerating the labor, you can naturally assume that the labor will decelerate. Eventually, I started feeling my contractions again, so the nurses had to do the little clicky thing and administer a little bit more of the epidural. That actually didn't work very well. So eventually I said, look, I'm really starting to feel my contractions pick up again. I think the epidural's wearing off. At which point the anesthesiologist had to come back in and administer, I guess, a stronger dose. That stronger dose made my legs and ass just dead fucking weight. It's like someone took 2 Christmas hams and stapled them to 2 strings of summer sausages. Just nothing but meat. The nurses just had to flop my lower half around like it was a windsock, just filled to the brim with ground beef. I'm really sorry about all these meat analogies. So I think it would be everybody's general consensus, with a dose so much stronger than the first one, that the epidural would not wear off before it was time to push, right? At 6:30, I start to feel a little bit of a tingle in my abdomen, almost like the contractions are coming back, but I couldn't quite tell because I still was fairly numb, and it's like, no way, right? That was a dead ass dose of epidural. Like, there's no way. So I just kind of put it in the back of my head until about an hour later, when I really could start to feel the contractions again. And then I also started to feel a little pressure. So I let my nurse know this. My nurse was a little bit dismissive, basically just saying I was stuck at 4 for so long while on the Pitocin. There's no way I could have progressed that much while off of it. I still felt like something was amiss, so I had her check anyway. So just so you guys know, when a woman gets to 10 centimeters dilated, she is ready to push. It's go time. Baby is coming out. Like, that's when the baby is there at the cusp, honey. Well, the nurse sticks her fingers in to check, and she looks up at me and goes, "You are 9 3/4. I can feel this baby. It is go time." I mean, y'all, you should have seen my mother's face. I have never seen my mom's jaw drop so far to the ground before. Like, it was cartoonish. Like, everybody just lit up in the room like, oh my God, it happened so fast. Like, even the nurse was like, shit, like, I wasn't expecting this bitch to open up so quick, okay? So the nurse went to go get my doctor, but my doctor had just sat down to eat dinner. So he was gonna wrap up his dinner and then show up in the delivery room when he was done. And I know that sounds kind of crazy, but it's actually really normal. The nurses do a huge percentage of work during delivery, and the doctor's really only there to oversee everything, make sure everything runs smoothly. If the patient needs stitches, he's there to do the stitching and to deliver the placenta. Now, at this point, the epidural was fading fast. I could feel every contraction, and they were getting stronger and stronger by the minute. I was starting to regain feeling in my legs. I could move them a little bit, and I was really starting to panic. Now, here's where I went very wrong. I did not take Lamaze classes. I did not learn how to do any specialized breathing. My husband did not take any coaching classes or read up on how to coach me through a natural birth, because both of us were like, hey, I'm not having a natural birth. Why would I? And you would think my husband would have experience because he already has a kid. Wrong. It was his first kid and he was in his mid-20s. He had no idea what he was doing. So we were both completely in the dark in that situation. So here is my pro tip. Always research alternative pain relief methods. If you're getting an epidural, research meditation, research breathing exercises, what it might be like to be in a different position while giving birth. If you're planning on doing all natural and you can't take the pain, research the epidural, because you never know what is going to happen. Amidst my panic, I felt this grapefruit-like thing pushing on my lower half, and I realized, that's my baby's head. That's the babes. He's ready to come out into this world. And just that, in that moment, made me kind of collect myself. Okay, I can feel everything except my big toe. Let's do this. I'm ready. I'm here. There's no turning back. I've been waiting for him. I have been waiting for him. I was so ready to meet my son. I was ready to meet my baby. Man, why do I do this to myself? And my husband was Mike was a rock star, okay? He got wrist deep in the trenches. He had never coached before, and he was amazing. He was reading the machine with the nurses so that he could tell me when to push when my contractions were coming, and he was saying, "You're doing great, Mama. I can see our baby boy, our beautiful baby boy." He was in the moment. He was listening to the nurses, but he was looking me in the eye and, just being a partner, a real, true, honest to God partner. As I continued to push, I was just feeling everything, and that was a good and a bad thing. Bad thing, obviously, because it hurts. Nobody wants to be in pain. I was hollering. I don't think I was out of control hollering. The two biggest, phrases I used were fuck, 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 and oh God, oh God, oh God. I was pretty well composed, I think. And then the other flip side, the beautiful, good, wonderful side, is I could feel my kid. I could feel him entering the world. That, you can't replace that feeling. It was wonderful. So yeah, it kind of sucks that the epidural wore off, but I'm actually really grateful it did, because I was able to feel my son come into this world by way of me. I was the vessel. I was the vessel that carried his little heartbeat for 9 months. I was able to give him the gift of life. And I just think it was a beautiful experience. And I am so grateful that I am able and was able to do this.
8:41.
You're scrawny.
Hi.
Oh God. Congratulations.
My baby.
Yeah.
Oh, hi there. Look at all that hairdo. Hello.
What time?
8:41. Yeah.
My baby. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Good job.
And just some period refills. Just left right over
Hi, baby.
there.
You brought him down real fast at the end, my friend. Good job.
All right, hold on tight, Mama. I'm gonna go get him.
Mama, grab onto him, Mama.
Yep, I'm just gonna put a hat on him. 2 seconds.
Baby. Oh.
Mama's been waiting for you.
Little Logan.
Unfortunately, after the babes was born, they noticed he was having a hard time breathing, and that there was something wasn't quite right with his left ear. So as soon as they put him on my chest, I had 5 minutes with him. Oh man, how many times have I almost cried in this video? And now it's oh God, it's an emotional thing, and it's okay, and I know it's okay. But the second I got 5 minutes, and then they took him away from me, and they took him to the NICU. And most moms' first nights, they're there in the room with the baby, and it's filled with love and happiness. But our first night was filled with worry and concern, and unfortunately sadness. And it was so hard, but I was just so exhausted. I barely knew what was going on. They just took him away from us. So they cleaned me up. I delivered the placenta, and then I wanted to go where he was. So they wheeled me up to the NICU. And what had happened is, he had a few pockets of air surrounding his lungs. And that actually ended up being fine. He didn't even need any oxygen. They just wanted to monitor that. The main reason they brought him to the NICU was because his left ear didn't fully develop. And that's called Microtia, which basically just means a small ear. And there are varying degrees of Microtia, and he has what is considered a more moderate case of Microtia, which it's like a little packing peanut on the side of his head. So they wanted to make sure that it was just the ear that didn't form, and that it wasn't a heart defect or a kidney defect or a more rare brain defect. So they had to keep him for 13 days in the NICU, and ran all these tests on him. And it was a very hard experience. And so remember how I said that when he was born, I didn't actually shed any tears. Because we got to stay in the hospital for another 3 days, and like every day I'd get up and I'd just be chomping at the bit to get up to the NICU. And I was in a lot of pain, so I had to be wheeled up there for the first few days. And that first night that we got to go home, like I didn't want to go home. I had to leave my baby. I mean, it was probably the hardest thing that I've ever had to do. And it's like when we got on the expressway and we're driving away and I could see the hospital disappearing in the background. And to know that like my baby's not coming home with me and I'll have to come home to the empty nursery. I mean, that was so hard. And like I kept having to tell myself like he's in the best place he can be. Like he's so safe with them at the NICU, and they're gonna do right by him and they're gonna do right by us. And like I just kept having to tell myself that because it was, those 13 days were just unbearable. Eventually got into a routine. I'd be up, I'd drive to the NICU, and eventually I got to meet other parents of babies that were in the NICU, and some of these people have come from hours away, and I just tell myself like I'm 30 minutes away, that's all. And these people, they have to leave their babies hours away just right after being born. I can't imagine their pain. So I just had to keep telling myself like I'm fortunate. And he ended up being fine. It was just the Microtia. Everything else is happy and healthy and functioning. And I'm so grateful for that. Oh my goodness. Ugh. And like now I can't imagine a life without him. Like he's my whole world. My whole world. And I get emotional because I've never loved so hard in my life, and I am so appreciative of my journey and all the wrongs and the rights, because they have led me here to my wonderful husband. They led me cross country. I dropped everything I ever knew. And, I've known this man for 11 years. I wasn't moving in with a stranger, but still, that's a huge change. And without that, I wouldn't have my beautiful son, and my beautiful family, ultimately, is what I am just, I can't stop saying grateful and appreciative, but I am. I just have this immense sense of fullness and gratefulness. And I want to round this back out to my channel. And this is why I make my videos, why I make some inspirational videos. This is why I do story times. It's because I've made mistakes. I've trusted the wrong people. I've done shitty things. I've made bad choices. But I've learned such a huge amount from them, and I want to share what I've learned with you guys. If my ignorance and the lessons I've learned from said ignorance can save one person from hurting, can save one person from making a grave mistake, then I am going to share. You guys are so wonderful and have been incredibly helpful and informative and supportive and loving this entire pregnancy. And I know I say this every pregnancy update video, but I really, really am appreciative for you guys. I think the art community is such a strong, blessed community, just absolutely filled with wonderful people and sweet people. And it's not just a community of artists. It's a community of lovers and people who are passionate. So thank you guys so much for your love and your support and your passion. And I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it was a tad bit long-winded, but to be fair, so was my labor and delivery. And ultimately, I look back on like the food poisoning and the delivery part lightheartedly because it was funny. Like, I come in with food poisoning and I eventually left with a baby. Like, and he was born on his due date, guys. Like, I guess I didn't focus on this before, but I think less than like 5% of women deliver on their due date. And even though it was because of food poisoning, like, I still say that counts, don't you? Like, I think that's really, really cool. And DeBabes, like, DeBabes is amazing.
All hail DeBabes.
DeBabes.
Must bow to DeBabes.
DeBabes.
Bring milk to DeBabes. DeBabes is God.
He's an amazing, beautiful baby. I mean, he's smiling already, and he already kind of like laughs, like he's almost laughing. He's so ahead of his game. He's so smart. And I just love him. And Mike loves him. My God, Mike loves him. I could go into a list of people who love him. He's loved in abundance, like no doubt about it. At the end of this video, I'm going to leave you guys with this funny little clip. I hope you enjoy it. And I know I included photos and footage all throughout this video, but this one's a little special. So stay tuned for that. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. And don't forget to stay out of trouble. See you guys later.
What's that pattern thing hanging around my neck? That's a bib, show me some respect. What's that fuzzy thing hanging off my arm? That's plush, my stuffed unicorn, and I thank God every day that I woke up needing to be changed, and I can't help crapping Oh man, that one really smelled. If I was you, I'd check on my poo-poo. I'd check on my poo-poo. I'd check on my poo-poo. If I was you, I'd check on my poo-poo. I'd check on my poo-poo. I'd check on my poo-poo. I set my duties free, it might be diarrhea, so mommy better check me. I hope I didn't wreck me, my diapers fell a poo-poo. I thought it was a toot-toot, and even if I tried to, I'd still have made a doo-doo. I thank God every day that I woke up needing to be changed, and I can't help crapping myself, 'cause I know that really smells. If I was you, I'd check on my poo-poo. I'd check on my poo-poo. I'd check on my poo-poo. If I was you, I'd check on my poo-poo. I'd check on my poo-poo. I'd check on my poo-poo.